What's going on, everybody? Cowboy C3 here. Hey, I told you guys I would come live today, talk about this 53-man roster. Roster got cut down. Few surprises. I'm gonna compare with my list, what I wrote, what I read yesterday, um, and see how I did. I think I did pretty good. Peyton Hendershot was traded today to the Kansas City Chiefs for a late round conditional pick. That's all the news that's on it. It's just a late round conditional pick. I thought that he would be on the roster. Reason being is because he has proven himself to be a serviceable tight end in the NFL. He makes some flash plays. He hurdles people. He does all that type of stuff. He was injured all training camp. He only got out the last week. Well, he got out of practice. He got out to practice the last week, and he did not get to play in the preseason game. But I figured that they would hold on to him. I did, but they didn't. That's it's understandable. But training him to the Kansas City Chiefs, he gets to work under Travis Kelce and with Andy Reid, and I bet you they make that dude a monster, man. I bet they do. I bet they make him a monster. And he's gonna be hell to handle. And Cowboy organization and Cowboy fans gonna be like, man, you should have held on to him. You know what I mean? Not to say that Jake Ferguson is not good, because Jake Ferguson is highly underrated right now. Highly underrated. He's probably one of the top 5-10 tight ends in the NFL right now. But if you look on people's like position rankings, right, he might fall as low as like 12, 14. But Jake Ferguson is good. He is very good. And he has proven to be a big target for Dak Prescott. Schoonmaker was a high draft pick last year. They're gonna use him. Like that's what they're supposed to do. You draft him high, you get your money's worth out of him. At least you attempt to. Like they're gonna attempt to do with Mozzie Smith too. Same kind of scenario. We drafted you high. We're gonna use you. And if you pan out to where you can't be, you're just not serviceable, then we'll just stop. And Hendershot was an undrafted free agent. Came in, made the squad just because of his toughness. You know what I mean? And the Cowboys really haven't had. I talked about this in the episode before too. Cowboys haven't really had just a hard-nosed tight end in a long time. Witten was more of a finesse guy. Excellent tight end, excellent hands, excellent route running, always seems to be open, but easy to tackle. He had that one run against Philly where his helmet got ripped off and he was running down the field, and you see that on more posters of Jason Witten than anything. But that was like probably the toughest play of his career. It always seemed like it was easy to go down. Same thing with Dalton Schultz. Great tight end, great hands, not real big on blocking, pretty easy to tackle. Ferguson and Hendershot kind of changed that when they came into the NFL. These guys are just rough, hard-nosed tight ends. And, the Cowboy organization hadn't had that in a while. So that was kind of a breath of fresh air. But Hendershot goes to, he goes to a Super Bowl winner. They definitely gonna be a Super Bowl contender this year too. They got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Yeah, they're gonna contend for a Super Bowl every year, as long as Patrick Mahomes stays healthy. But he'll get an opportunity to learn from one of the best tight ends to ever suit up and play the game. So I'm sure it'll be beneficial for him. All right, let's go through this list. Quarterbacks. I'll read the quarterbacks that I'll read the position and the players from the positions that I said that I thought would be on the 53-man roster, and I'll read the actual 53-man roster, and we'll see how we compare. Quarterbacks. Dak Prescott, Cooper Rush. They kept Trey Lance. Trey Lance will be on the 53-man roster. Now, the NFL has a rule. You can suit up 2 quarterbacks on Sundays. You actually can suit up 3 quarterbacks on Sundays. The third quarterback is the emergency quarterback. He cannot go into games. He can't go in. unless the starter gets hurt. And then he automatically moves into the backup role. So he will not be on the active roster. He will be on the sideline. He'll be suited up, but he will not be on the active roster unless something happens to Dak Prescott or if something happens to Cooper Rush. Running backs. Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdell, Deuce Vaughn, Hunter Lemke is who I chose. Cowboys chose Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdell, Deuce Vaughn, and Hunter Lemke. Those were the running backs that they kept. Wide receivers, I said CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Brooks, Turpin, Flournoy, and I put Jalen Cropper. They kept Cooks, Tolbert, Brooks, Flournoy, Turpin, and CeeDee Lamb. Jalen Cropper didn't make it. Tight ends. I said Ferguson, Schoonmaker, Hendershot. They kept Ferguson, Schoonmaker, John Stevens Jr., and Brevin Spann-Ford. Super surprised about Brevin Spann-Ford because he did not have a great training camp. He didn't have a great preseason. Draft pick, though, big guy, huge dude, like 6'7". You know, he gives you a weapon in the red zone. Will they use him? Maybe. We'll see. Okay, I'm just going to read I'm going to read the tackles and guards together because they just have it as offensive linemen. So I said Tyler Guyton, Terrence Steele, Asim Richards, Chuma Edoga, Tyler Smith, Zach Martin, and TJ Bass. Those were the ones that I picked. They picked Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe. Oh, I forgot the sentence. I said Cooper Beebe and Brock Hoffman. They kept Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Zach Martin, Terrence Steele, Brock Hoffman, TJ Bass, Asim Richards, Matt Waletzko, and Chuma Edoga. Super surprised by the Waletzko keep too, because he played bad in the preseason. It wasn't even like he played decent, okay, so. He was bad in the preseason, but he made the 53-man roster. Defensive linemen. I'll read all the defensive ends and the defensive tackles together because they have all of their defensive linemen together as well. So DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, Marshawn Nealon. I said Muhammad Odigizua, Mozzie Smith, Jordan Phillips, and Linval Joseph. They kept Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Marshawn Nealon, Tyus Wheat, Osi Odigizua, Mozzie Smith, Chauncey Golston, Jordan Phillips, and Linval Joseph. No Muhammad on the list. Kept Chauncey Golston instead, which is understandable. Both of them were decent. Didn't really produce much pass rush, right? You had a third-round pick in Fihoko that didn't even make the roster this year. They cut him. That was more of a Dan Quinn type of player, just not going to fit this defensive scheme. Linebackers. I said Luafau, Overshown, Eric Kendricks, Damone Clark, Buddy Johnson. Those were my picks. They kept Kendricks, Overshown, Luafau, Clark, and Buddy Johnson. Buddy Johnson had a hell of a preseason. He had a hell of a last two games. Was playing well in practice, didn't really pan out in the first preseason game, but in those last two preseason games, Buddy Johnson was all over the place. And it was just kind of there. The writing was kind of on the wall, like, hey, Buddy Johnson might stick around, and that's what he did. Congratulations to Buddy. Safeties. I said Hooker, Wilson, Ball, and Makamu. And Wanye Thomas. They kept Wilson, Hooker, Bell, and Thomas. Now, this is where I said Makamu was different because he can play corner and safety. He can play both. I had him picked in as a safety. Cowboys kept him as a corner. My corners were Diggs, Carson, Lewis, Booth, and Scott Jr. And, of course, Deron Bland is going to be he's on injury reserve, so he'll be out for at least 6 weeks. So I had Bland on the roster as well. They kept Diggs, Lewis, Carson, Booth, and Mukamu. Eric Scott Jr. didn't make the roster. And special teams, Trent Siggs, CJ Goodwin, Brian Anger, Brandon Aubrey. Those were already given. Those are just the 4 special teamers that they have. Little surprise, couple of surprises. The Cowboys, what they will do is they will put 2 players on the injured reserve who maintain eligibility to be brought back during the season. That's what they put Deron Bland on. And I'm pretty sure they're going to do the same thing with Chuma Edoga. The same thing, right? Tyler Guyton will be your starting left tackle to begin the season. If it goes well, he'll probably stay. If it doesn't go well, once Edoga gets healthy, Edoga will come back and be the left tackle. There weren't really any surprises that didn't make the roster. Not really. There were maybe some receivers, maybe. Tyron Billy Johnson had a good camp, but he didn't really show up in games. Not really. Jalen Brooks is, he's on the roster. He's going to have to step in and kind of take some of that load. Tolbert, obviously, is going to be there as well. Jalen Tolbert is going to be there. Jalen Tolbert is going to probably have to play the second receiver and let Brandon Cooks run out of the slot. He can go out wide too, just like CeeDee Lamb. They can line up Cooks and Tolbert outside and put CeeDee Lamb in the slot too. They can kind of mix things around that way. John Stevens Jr., he does give you a big athletic tight end. He gives you that. Probably a little bit more athletic than Hendershot. He was hurt last year, though. We'll see what he brings with toughness because he is going to be the third tight end. They run a 3 tight end set. It's going to be John Stevens Jr. is going to come in. Running back room still looks a little shaky, though. Zeke is projected to be a starter. And what we'll do probably on Saturday during the extended show, we'll talk about the starting 11 and how I think they're gonna do it on both sides of the ball. It's kind of obvious what they're gonna do. Defensive wise is where the questions will be, because I think they'll rotate players in and out, because especially a linebacker, because they have linebackers now that they can rotate in and out and they're going to get the job done. Something that the Cowboys did not have last year at all. And they went and got some big veteran defensive tackles to at least slow down the run. Something that they didn't have last year. Just not Dan Quinn likes a smaller, quicker type of defense. And that's just not the type of defense that they're going to play this year. It's just not. And that's a good thing. I believe that's a good thing. So we'll go through that, like I said, on Saturday. Running back room, back to the topic at hand, the running back room. Running back room looks a little shaky. Still, with Zeke being your starter, Rico Dowdle back him up, or vice versa, right? And then you got Deuce Vaughn in, who's going to get some carries. I mean, I think he's earned some carries with this preseason. He looks pretty electric. He looks like he might, if he wasn't small in stature, he'd probably be your starting running back. And Lipke, of course, is going to be your fullback. He'll lead block, in situations, or, kind of play a H-back type of role. They brought in Dalvin Cook. And if you look at the title of the video, it says Dalvin Cook watch. I really don't think there's much to watch. Not really. We got a veteran running back who's 29 years old. Do we really need another one? He was pretty bad with the Jets last year. Now, he was nursing a shoulder injury. He ended up signing with the Ravens for the postseason. I remember he had a couple of carries against the Texans and went pretty good. And he may have had like one carry in the AFC Championship game against Kansas City, maybe one. Just wasn't productive last year at all. But reports are that he was nursing a shoulder injury. He was recovering from a shoulder injury. He was kind of protecting his shoulder. He was running. Now he's fully healthy. He's healed up from that. So maybe he's ready to go. But in the season before that, in 2022, he rushed for 1,200 yards in Minnesota. He had a good season. I'm not sure he's that same running back. Not 1,200 yards. I don't think he's that. Can he come in and maybe give some veteran leadership to the backfield? Sure. But you already have Zeke Elliott doing that. Could have got a running back in the draft, but that 4th round pick went on Trey Lance. A lot of good running backs were still available in the 4th round. Just it didn't happen. So now, not saying that you're stuck. There's some other players, some younger running backs with fresher legs out there that didn't make some rosters that, I think you could probably bring them in that could be just as serviceable, if not more serviceable than Dalvin Cook could. Dalvin Cook came in. He actually came in yesterday. There's no report if he left or not. He could still be here. But they bought him in to entertain the option of signing him to a contract. I think the reports are the Cowboys have about $40 million in cap space right now, something like that. They can only take like half of it into the next season. So they have to spend half of the money. And if I'm not mistaken, it's around $40 million before the end of the season. Now, that money can be spent a lot of different ways. It could be spent on a number of things. It could be spent on bringing players in. Another player that I think they bought in was defensive end. His last name is Bowser from the Ravens. He had a real good year, I want to say back in 2021. And he spent the last 2 seasons just kind of beat up, and the Ravens cut him. They bought him in, some defensive end depth, because during the preseason, with the exception of that last game in the second half against the Chargers, there was absolutely zero pressure put on quarterbacks. None. And how they put pressure on Easton Stick in that last preseason game in the second half is they dialed up some blitzes and some people broke free and put some just to put some pressure on them and stop letting them get free passes off. And for the most part, it worked. Just the offense couldn't capitalize on the defensive stops, and I think they had 2 turnovers. Got to produce pressure. Have to. DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons are going to produce that pressure. Nealon is going to bring some pressure. He's a different type of defensive end than those two. Marshawn Nealon is just a big brute, and he is going to bull rush. He's excellent against the run because he's excellent with his arm, got long arms. He's extended. He's standing, keeping his body away from the tackle, keeping the tackle's arms off of him, right? And he kind of can shed off blocks and make tackles on runs. But he's strong enough to go at a tackle and push him back into the quarterback. And that's the type of pressure that he is going to produce. With DeMarcus Lawrence, he can produce that type of pressure, but he's fast enough to go around you. And we all know Micah Parsons he's a 4.3 40 guy that can play defensive end and linebacker. He's just kind of a cheat code. Just need him not to disappear in big games. Kind of like everybody else on the Dallas Cowboys too, but including the coaching staff. So that is the Dalvin Cook watch, which I don't really think there's much of a watch. If you go, we can find there's a better option. Now, if they bring in Dalvin Cook, what he does provide is that he can run between the tackles. He's fast enough, or was fast enough. We'll have to see now. He was fast enough to break a run outside, and he has excellent hands. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He does bring you some things that the Cowboys could definitely use in their offense. I just think that Rico Dowdle might be a better running back than Dalvin Cook is right now. That's just how I feel about it. But that remains to be seen. We'll see what they do. Haven't offered him a contract as of yet, but you got 10 or 12 days before the first game of the season. So plenty of time. All right. Saturday, we'll talk about the roster, projected starting 11, which shouldn't be really that hard to do. But we'll talk about the roster, and that will give us the perfect opportunity to go into the schedule one more time. I did a little quick overview of the schedule on an earlier episode. We'll dive in depth into the schedule and see how the Cowboys can finish this season. I'm going to give you my projection. I'm going to give you the ceiling, and I'm also give you the floor. So I'm going to give you what I think is the best the Cowboys can do this season, and I'm also going to give you what I think the worst they can do this season. And normally they fit like in the middle somewhere. But I mean, hey, last couple years, last 3 years, 12-5, strong regular seasons. But then we leave the checkerboard at the house and we get into this chessboard when it gets into the playoffs, and that's normally when they get beat. It's chess. It's not checkers anymore. And that's where we're gonna have to change some things. But we'll go into the season, dive into it, see how these boys are gonna do. You got regular practice with the 53-man roster that I believe starts tomorrow, and it'll probably be light practices, and then you'll probably get, the weekend off for sure. And then you come in Monday and you start working on the Cleveland Brown game plan, man. You probably starting to work on it. They'll probably start putting the game plan in tomorrow just to make sure some of these younger players are ready to go when they play the Cleveland Browns. That's your first game of the season. And we'll talk about that game a little bit more next week. The Cleveland Browns are going to be missing some key players in that game. And it bodes well for the Cowboys. It does. But we'll talk about it more. All right. This Cowboy C3, man. Y'all have a great rest of your evening. Be safe out there, and we'll see y'all soon. Peace.